When I finally refused to hand over the keys to my own lake cabin, I thought it would end the endless harassment. But instead, HOA Karen called 911, accusing me of threats. What the police discovered next, that she'd been secretly trespassing on my property for weeks. What followed was a shocking showdown that changed everything. The lake was supposed to be my sanctuary. A quiet place where the world's chaos slowed down, where I could breathe without the endless demands of neighbors or rules. But that peace shattered the day Karen showed up again, this time with a determined glare and a demand I wasn't prepared for. "Give me the keys," she said sharply, standing on my porch like she owned the place. "No," I replied, locking the cabin door behind me. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows, but my resolve was brighter than any light. This cabin was mine, private, paid for, a refuge from the controlling eyes of the HOA. Karen was the face of that control, the self-appointed sheriff of our little lake community, and she didn't like being told no. She took a step forward, her voice dropping to a cold whisper. "You don't understand. This is about safety. The HOA needs access to all properties." Her words felt like a blade. Safety? She meant control. And I refused to hand it over. I turned my back on her, preparing to leave, but she blocked my way. "You're being difficult. This isn't just about you." I stared at her. "This is my property. You don't have the right to demand my keys." That's when her phone came out, and she dialed 911, her fingers shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. "911, what's your emergency?" The calm voice over the line contrasted sharply with the storm brewing on my porch. "This man is threatening me," Karen said, voice high and trembling. "He's refusing to cooperate, and I don't feel safe." The seconds stretched out like hours as I watched the phone in her hand. Threatening? I had said one word. No. "Sir, please stay calm. Officers are on their way." Her gaze burned into me, daring me to say something else. But I held my silence. Minutes later, the sound of sirens shattered the quiet lake air. Red and blue lights flashed across the water's surface, reflecting off the trees lining the shore. The police pulled up, officers stepping out cautiously, their eyes flicking between Karen and me. "What's going on here?" one officer asked, voice steady but wary. Karen wasted no time. "He's threatening me, refusing to give me the keys to his cabin. I'm worried for the community's safety." I shook my head. I never threatened her. She's trespassing on my property. Trespassing? The officer's eyes narrowed. "On your property?" "Yes," I said, feeling a mix of anger and relief that someone was listening. Karen scoffed. "That's ridiculous. I'm part of the HOA. I have every right." The officers glanced at each other, the tension rising. "We'll need to look into this," one said. "Do you have any evidence of the trespassing?" I hesitated, then pulled out my phone. "I installed security cameras after Karen started showing up uninvited. They capture everything." Karen's eyes flicked to the phone, panic flashing for a moment before she masked it with a cold stare. The officer tapped the screen, watching video footage of Karen slipping through the side gate, opening windows, wandering inside the cabin when no one was home. Her face twisted with anger and disbelief as she saw the undeniable proof. "This changes everything," the officer said quietly. Karen stepped back, her composure cracking. "This is a misunderstanding. I was checking for hazards." "Hazards?" I cut in. "You were trespassing, invading my privacy." The officer nodded firmly. "Ma'am, you're officially trespassing." Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. The weight of the evidence was crushing her carefully crafted narrative. I felt a surge of vindication, but knew this wasn't over. Karen lunged forward suddenly, trying to grab the cabin door handle. "Give me those keys." I stepped back, blocking her. "No, you're done here." Her breath came fast, eyes wild. The officers moved between us, stepping in to keep the peace. "Ma'am, please calm down. You need to leave." She glared at me one last time before storming off, her footsteps echoing through the quiet woods. The officers took notes, promising to file a report. As they left, I locked the cabin door tightly behind me, heart pounding but a strange calm settling over my chest. This fight had exposed a truth I hadn't expected. The people who claim to protect you can sometimes be your greatest threat. Days later, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. Karen wasn't there, replaced by whispers and half-truths. The board was forced to confront the scandal, her abuse of power laid bare. My neighbors, once silent or supportive of Karen's iron grip, started questioning her motives. But the damage went deeper than the HOA. Trust was broken, fences metaphorically torn down by secrets and lies. I stayed at the cabin that weekend, the water lapping gently at the shore, sunlight filtering through the pine trees. It felt peaceful again, but I knew the battle had changed me. Sometimes the people you least expect are the ones who push you to fight the hardest for your home, your privacy, your peace. In this lake cabin, it was mine to protect. They said the cabin was mine, but Karen acted like it belonged to her. Every time I pulled up to the lake, there she was, looming at the edge of the property, sharp eyes scanning the yard as if she had some right to judge every leaf, every plank of wood, every breath I took there. She was the old president, but more than that, she was a control freak who thought the entire community, including me, existed solely for her convenience. For months, I'd endured her sudden inspections, her passive-aggressive friendly visits, and her relentless request for my cabin keys, insisting she needed access for the safety of the neighborhood. I humored her at first, letting her peek inside once or twice, hoping it would satisfy her, but she never stopped. That afternoon, the sunlight was just starting to dip behind the trees when I pulled into the gravel driveway. The peaceful quiet of the lake was shattered by the sound of her voice, sharp and demanding. "Hand over the keys," Karen said as soon as I stepped onto the porch. Her tone was neither polite nor negotiable. "You can't keep locking me out." I met her eyes without blinking. "No. This cabin is my property. You have no right to demand my keys." The door clicked as I locked it behind me, the metal bolt sliding into place with finality. She stepped closer, a predatory smile creeping across her face. "You're making things difficult. For the whole community." I shook my head, feeling a cold knot of anger tighten in my stomach. "This is my home, not the HOA's plaything. I won't give you the keys." She straightened up, pulling out her phone. The movement was so quick, so practiced, that I barely registered it until I heard the chilling words, "911, what's your emergency?" Her voice was calm, but hard as stone. "There's a man here refusing to cooperate," she told the operator. "He's threatening me. I don't feel safe." Her eyes locked onto mine, daring me to say something. I didn't. I knew better. Because the moment the police arrived, I'd be the one under scrutiny, not her. When the flashing lights finally arrived, cutting through the golden hour, my chest tightened. The officer stepped out, eyes sharp, scanning the situation carefully. Karen was first to speak, spinning her story of threat and hostility. I stayed silent, watching as the officers exchanged glances. "Sir, do you have any proof she's trespassed on your property?" one asked, skeptical. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, opening the app connected to the security cameras I'd installed weeks ago after I'd begun to suspect Karen was crossing lines. The footage played silently on the small screen, Karen creeping through the side gate late at night, hands pushing open windows, her face twisting with frustration as she rifled through drawers and cabinets in my absence. The officers leaned in, eyes widening at the undeniable proof. Karen's carefully constructed image of a concerned community leader crumbled before them. She opened her mouth to protest, but the words caught in her throat. "You've been trespassing," one officer said flatly. Her glare burned through the screen. "This is harassment. I'm only trying to keep the community safe." I laughed bitterly. "By breaking into my home?" Her facade cracked further, revealing panic beneath. Then she lunged forward, trying to snatch the phone from my hand, her nails scraping the glass as I pulled it away. "Enough!" An officer barked, stepping between us. "Ma'am, calm down." Karen's breathing was ragged, eyes wild. She spun around, storming off the porch as if this was someone else's fight. But the damage was done. After the police left, I stood on my porch, staring at the door I had locked tight. The lake stretched out before me, calm and silent, but the battle that had erupted here would echo for a long time. This wasn't just about keys or cabins. It was about control, invasion, and boundaries crossed. I had protected what was mine, but at a cost. Days later, the HOA board convened an emergency meeting. Karen didn't show up, but the rumors had already spread like wildfire. Her reputation was in tatters, and the community was forced to reckon with what she'd done. Neighbors who had once turned a blind eye began asking questions, quietly, cautiously. Still, I felt uneasy. Karen wasn't the kind of person to accept defeat gracefully. The cameras had saved me this time, but what if next time there were no cameras? What if next time she tried something worse? One evening, as the sun dipped low and the air cooled, I sat on the cabin's back deck, listening to the water lap gently against the shore. The serenity was a balm, but my mind raced with what could come next. I knew one thing for sure. This fight was far from over. The people who claimed to protect you might be the ones who threaten you most. And my cabin, my refuge, was worth every battle. If you want, I can expand it with more dialogue or internal thoughts. This version keeps it flowing without breaks or narration, straight storytelling as requested. Would you like me to add that? I didn't want to believe it at first, that Karen had been sneaking around my cabin. It seemed impossible. The HOA president, always so buttoned up and polished, suddenly caught on camera creeping through my windows like some criminal. But the evidence was undeniable. The video footage stared back at me, grainy but clear enough to make my blood run cold. There she was, under the cover of darkness, slipping past the side gate I had always locked, her hands trembling as she pried the window latch open with practiced ease. She moved carefully, as if afraid of being caught, though what she didn't realize was that every moment was recorded, every step documented. Then she entered, looking around like a thief searching for something, fingers rifling through drawers, opening cabinets, checking every corner of my home. I watched the images, my heart pounding in disbelief. Why? What was she looking for? And why did she think she had the right? I sat in the cabin's living room, my phone pressed against my palm, the video still playing. The sun was low outside, but the darkness in the footage swallowed everything. A noise behind me made me spin around. There she was, standing just inside the open door, her arms crossed, face unreadable, but eyes sharp and cold. "You shouldn't have this," Karen said, her voice steady but venomous. "You're invading my privacy with those cameras." "I'm protecting myself," I said. "You've been trespassing here for weeks. I don't trust you, not after what I've seen." Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "I'm protecting this community. You don't see the bigger picture." She stepped further inside, brushing past me like I was a ghost. "I'm watching out for hazards, for dangers you can't even imagine. This isn't personal." "But it is," I snapped, anger flooding me. "You lied to the HOA board. You lied to the police. You painted me as the aggressor when you're the one sneaking around like a criminal." Karen's eyes flashed. "You don't know what I'm capable of. I've done what had to be done." "And that's why you have no right to be here." I took a step toward the door. "Get off my property." She shook her head, voice dropping to a hiss. "You think you're safe behind your locks and cameras? This is just the beginning." I locked the door firmly behind her, but the unease settled deep in my bones. She wasn't bluffing. The battle was far from over. A sudden knock startled me. I opened the door a crack. 2 officers stood there, expression serious. "We reviewed the footage you sent," one said. "This is serious. You have a right to feel safe on your property." Karen's lies were unraveling, but the damage she'd done was hard to undo. The officers warned her against any further trespassing and promised to keep a watchful eye. Relief washed over me, but I knew Karen would try again. Days later, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. Karen was absent, but the tension in the room was palpable. Neighbors whispered about what they'd seen, and some voiced concerns they'd never dared express before. The board voted to investigate Karen's actions, and for the first time I felt a shift, a chance to reclaim not just my cabin, but my peace. Still, late at night I replayed the footage in my mind, imagining Karen lurking outside, watching, waiting. The sanctuary I'd built was now a battleground. The fight to protect what was mine had only just begun. The moment Karen's fingers reached for the cabin door handle, everything tightened inside me. I was standing just behind the door, my hand gripping the edge as if it were a lifeline. No, I said, voice low but steady. You're done here. Her eyes narrowed, a fierce glint flashing as she tugged harder on the handle. Give me those keys, she snapped. You can't just lock me out. Because you don't have the right, I said, stepping forward to block her path. I'm not giving you anything. Karen's breath hitched. You think this is about keys? This is about control. You don't belong here. I belong here more than you ever will, I interrupted, feeling the weight of months of frustration and fear crash into rage. She stepped back, scowling, and suddenly lunged, hands grabbing at my jacket. I stumbled, but didn't fall. Stop, I shouted. The air between us crackled, tension so thick I could taste it. Two sharp voices cut through the chaos. Ma'am, step back. Officers pushed between us, separating our bodies but not the fury burning in our eyes. Karen's chest heaved, eyes wild. This isn't over, she spat. I'll be back. You'll see. One officer shook his head. Not on this property. You're trespassing. If you come back, you'll be arrested. Her face twisted with hatred as she turned and stormed away, boots crunching on gravel, fading into the shadows. I closed the door, locked every bolt, and sank against it, heart pounding like a war drum. The lake was silent around me, but inside the storm raged on. Days passed. The HOA board summoned her to answer for her actions, but Karen refused to show. Rumors spread, neighbors whispered, alliances shifted. The cabin, once a refuge, had become a battlefield. But I stood firm. This was my home, my peace, and no one, not Karen, not anyone, was going to take that from me. I locked the door behind me and took a deep breath, the weight of what had just happened pressing down like a heavy fog. The lake cabin was supposed to be my refuge, a place untouched by drama and conflict, but everything had changed in a single day. Karen was gone now, but her shadow lingered everywhere, etched into every window, every floorboard, every moment I spent looking over my shoulder. I hadn't expected the fight to get this ugly. When she first started demanding the keys, I thought it was just another hassle, an overbearing HOA president trying to assert control. But then she crossed the line, trespassing repeatedly, sneaking onto my property like some thief in the night. The footage I showed the police was enough to get her charged with trespassing, and the HOA board finally had to open their eyes to the truth. Yet despite all that, the aftermath was far from peaceful. The days after Karen's arrest felt surreal. The neighbors who once smiled politely now whispered behind my back or outright avoided eye contact. Some sided with Karen, convinced I had overreacted, that the cameras were an invasion of privacy. Others quietly offered their support but stayed silent at meetings, afraid to stir the pot. The HOA was fractured, trust shattered like broken glass. I was left wondering if this was worth it, if defending my home had just made me a pariah. One afternoon, as I sat on the deck watching the sun dip below the trees, my phone buzzed. A text from Tom, the HOA secretary. Meeting tomorrow. You should come. Important. I sighed and typed back, what now? The reply was quick, community healing. Your chance to speak. I didn't know if I was ready, but I had to try. The next day, the community center was packed. Faces I recognized from years of summers at the lake looked tense, guarded. Karen wasn't there, obviously, but her presence filled the room like a storm cloud. I stood up when it was my turn, the silence heavy as all eyes turned toward me. I want to start by saying I never wanted this fight, I began, voice steady despite the nerves. This cabin is my home. Karen's trespassing violated my privacy and safety, and I had to protect what's mine. I paused, searching for words that wouldn't inflame the situation. I hope we can move past this, rebuild trust. I'm willing to work with the HOA, but it has to be fair for everyone. A few heads nodded, and some even smiled slightly. Then came the tough questions, voices sharp but not hostile. How can we trust cameras won't be used to spy on others? What safeguards are in place to protect privacy? Can we establish clearer rules on access and boundaries? I answered honestly, explaining how the cameras were a last resort, how the footage was shared only with police, and how important it was to respect personal space. Slowly, the room's tension eased. We agreed to form a committee to review HOA policies and improve communication. Walking home afterward, I felt a cautious hope stirring. Maybe this was the beginning of healing, not just for me, but for the entire community. That night, as I lay in bed, the cabin was quiet except for the gentle hum of the lake's breeze. I thought about Karen. What drove her to cross every line? Control? Fear? A twisted sense of duty? I didn't have the answers, and maybe I never would. But I knew one thing. I wouldn't let fear dictate my life or give up my sanctuary. Weeks turned into months. The committee met regularly, neighbors slowly reconnecting. Karen's absence was felt but didn't define us. The cabin felt like home again, not a battleground. One early morning, I walked down to the water's edge, the mist curling over the lake like a soft veil. The sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sky with gold and pink. I breathed in the crisp air, letting the calm wash over me. This was my place, my peace. No one could take that away. I reached into my pocket, fingers brushing the worn cabin keys. I held them tightly, a reminder that some battles are worth fighting and some homes are worth defending, no matter the cost.